I was sitting in my lawyer's office, putting my signature on the final documents that would close this chapter of my life forever. 3 years ago, I had married Mark Miller and become a stepmother to his 17-year-old daughter, Emma, treating her like my own child after her mother passed away from cancer. I paid for her private school tuition, bought her first car, and spent countless hours helping her navigate teenage life. Now my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Thanks for ruining my life. Dad says we have to sell the house because of what you did." The irony was bitter. She had helped my husband hide his affair for 8 months. Before I tell you how I destroyed both their comfortable lies, and secure future, comment below where you are watching from and hit that like button if you have ever been betrayed by someone you treated like family. Subscribe because what I discovered about their betrayal will make you question everyone you trust. When I married Mark Miller 3 years ago, I thought I was gaining not just a husband but a daughter too. Mark was a widower whose wife had died of cancer when Emma was 14, leaving behind a grieving father and a lost teenage girl who had just entered high school. At 29, I had no children of my own, but something about Emma's vulnerability touched my heart immediately. The beginning was not easy. Emma was naturally suspicious of any woman who tried to take her mother's place, and I understood that completely. Instead of pushing for immediate acceptance, I took my time building our relationship brick by brick. I would drive her to school every morning listening to her favorite music and learning about her friends. I learned to cook her favorite comfort foods when she had bad days, and I spent weekend afternoons taking her shopping for clothes and makeup. Slowly, Emma began to open up to me. She started calling me Mom Audrey instead of just using my first name, and that small change meant everything to me. When she had her first heartbreak at 16, she came crying to me instead of calling her friends. When she got her driver's license, I was the one who taught her parallel parking in our driveway for hours until she got it right. These moments made me feel like I was truly becoming her mother figure. Mark worked as an accountant for a mid-sized firm, earning a decent but modest salary. I worked as a marketing manager for a tech startup, and my income was significantly higher than his. When we decided to buy our house together, I contributed 60% of the down payment and mortgage payments, though we put both names on the deed because we were building a life together. Emma flourished under our combined care. I enrolled her in the private school, where she could get the best college preparation, paying the $15,000 annual tuition without hesitation. For her 16th birthday, I surprised her with a used Honda Civic so she could drive herself to school and activities. When she talked about her friends at school, she would proudly refer to me as my mom rather than my stepmom, which always made my heart swell with pride. Our family dinners became a cherished ritual. Emma would tell us about her classes, her crushes, her drama with friends, and her dreams for college. Mark and I would share stories from our workdays, and we would plan weekend activities together. Movie nights on Friday, hiking on Saturday mornings, and lazy Sunday brunches became our routine. I truly believed we had created the perfect blended family. But about 6 months ago, things started to shift in ways that were so subtle, I almost missed them. Mark began working late more frequently, claiming that tax season was keeping him busy, even though it was clearly past tax season. His phone, which used to sit openly on the kitchen counter, was now always face down or in his pocket. When it rang during dinner, he would step outside to take the call, saying it was work-related. Emma's behavior changed too, though I initially attributed it to normal teenage mood swings. She became less talkative during our drives to school, preferring to stare out the window with her headphones in rather than chat about her day. Our weekend shopping trips became shorter and less frequent because she claimed she was too busy with schoolwork or plans with friends. Most concerning was the way conversations between Mark and Emma would abruptly stop when I entered a room. I would walk into the kitchen and find them talking in low voices, only to have them immediately change the subject to something mundane like homework or what to make for dinner. The easy family dynamic we had built began to feel forced and artificial. The first real sign that something was seriously wrong came on a Tuesday afternoon when I decided to leave work early to surprise Emma with her favorite coffee and pastries from the bakery near her school. When I pulled into our driveway, I saw her Honda parked in its usual spot, but when I called out that I was home, there was no response. Mark emerged from his home office looking slightly startled to see me. "Where is Emma?" "Her car is here, but she is not answering," I asked. "Oh, she went to study group at Sarah's house. Sarah's mom picked her up," he replied without making eye contact. Something felt off about his explanation, so I discreetly checked the location sharing on our family phone plan. Emma's phone was showing a location about 15 miles away, at an address I did not recognize. When I asked Mark about it later, he seemed confused and suggested that maybe Emma had forgotten to update me about a change in study location. My marketing background had taught me to pay attention to data and patterns, so I started keeping track of these inconsistencies. I began reviewing our family phone bill more carefully and discovered that Mark had been making dozens of calls to a number I did not recognize. When I reverse searched the number online, I found it belonged to Jessica Wong, a 28-year-old woman who worked in the same building as Mark's accounting firm. Emma's credit card statements, which came to our house since I was the primary account holder, showed a troubling pattern. There were charges for expensive dinners at upscale restaurants, always for exactly 3 people, during times when Emma was supposedly at study groups or sleepovers with friends. The timing of these charges coincided perfectly with Mark's claimed overtime shifts. When I confronted Emma directly about her whereabouts during these study sessions, she had detailed explanations ready. She would describe the homework they had worked on, which friends had been there, and even what snacks Sarah's mom had provided. Her stories were so elaborate and consistent that I began to doubt my own suspicions. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was looking for problems that did not exist. But then I found the hotel receipt. While doing laundry, I discovered a crumpled piece of paper in the pocket of Emma's jeans. It was a receipt from the Grand Valley Hotel, about 30 miles from our home, for a room booked under Mr. and Mrs. Miller for a date 2 weeks earlier. That same evening, Mark had told me he was working late on a difficult client's taxes, and Emma had said she was sleeping over at her friend Katie's house. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to form a picture I did not want to see. My husband was having an affair, and somehow my stepdaughter was involved in helping him hide it. The betrayal felt like a physical blow to my chest. I had trusted them both completely, and they had been lying to my face for months. Desperate to understand the full scope of what was happening, I made the difficult decision to install a small security camera in our living room, disguised as a decorative piece on the bookshelf. The footage it captured over the next week destroyed any remaining doubt I had about what was going on. I watched Emma coaching Mark before I came home from work. "She's asking questions about your overtime again. You need to be more careful," Emma said, looking directly at her father with a maturity that chilled me. "Tell her you are working on the Peterson account again. That always works." Mark nodded, practicing his response. "The Peterson audit is taking longer than expected. I might be late again tomorrow night?" "Good. Just stick to that story. Jessica said she can meet you at the usual place after 7. The casual way they discussed deceiving me, the practiced nature of their lies, made it clear that this was not a recent development. They had been working together to betray me for months, maybe longer. I hired a private investigator named David Chen, who provided me with photographic evidence that confirmed my worst fears. Mark and Jessica were definitely having an affair, and Emma was not just aware of it, but actively facilitating it. There were photos of the 3 of them having dinner together with Emma, smiling and laughing as if she was enjoying a family outing with her father and his girlfriend. The final devastating revelation came when David informed me that Jessica was 4 months pregnant, and Mark had been telling her that he was planning to leave me to be with her. Emma knew about the pregnancy and had been helping Mark plan how to break up our marriage in a way that would minimize his financial losses. Once I fully understood the extent of their betrayal, I knew I needed to protect myself legally and financially before confronting them. I scheduled a consultation with Sarah Davidson, one of the most respected divorce attorneys in the city, and began documenting everything systematically. I gathered all evidence of my financial contributions to our household, the bank records showing my larger share of the house down payment receipts for Emma's tuition payments, insurance documents for her car, and records of every major expense I had covered for our family. Sarah helped me understand that my substantial financial investment in our marriage would work in my favor during divorce proceedings. Working with methodical precision, I quietly transferred funds from our joint accounts into a separate account in my name only, which was completely legal under our state's divorce laws. I removed Mark from my company's health insurance policy during the next enrollment period and canceled the credit cards where Emma was an authorized user. Every automatic payment for Emma's expenses that came from my accounts was quietly stopped. The most strategic move involved Emma's college applications. She was a senior in high school, applying to expensive private universities with the expectation that I would fund her education, just as I had been funding everything else in her life. I had already met with college counselors and had been preparing to pay for application fees, campus visits, and ultimately 4 years of tuition and expenses. Instead, I withdrew all the money I had been saving for Emma's college fund and moved it into my personal investment account. I canceled the upcoming meetings with college counselors that I had scheduled and paid for in advance. Emma had no idea that her college dreams were completely dependent on my continued financial support, and I was about to remove that support entirely. While I was making these preparations, I was also building a comprehensive case file that documented Emma's active participation in helping Mark hide his affair. I had screenshots of their text conversations that I had captured through our family phone plan audio recordings from the hidden camera and witness statements from the private investigator. 3 weeks after discovering the hotel receipt, I was finally ready to confront them. I chose a Thursday evening when I knew they would both be home, having confirmed that Mark was not planning to meet Jessica that night. I placed the divorce papers on the kitchen table, along with a thick folder containing all the evidence I had gathered. When Mark walked into the kitchen and saw the documents, his face went completely white. "I know about Jessica, the pregnancy, and Emma's help covering it up," I said calmly, sitting across from him at the table where we had shared so many family dinners. Mark's first instinct was denial. "Audrey, I have no idea what you are talking about. There is no affair. Jessica is just a colleague." At that moment, Emma walked into the kitchen and immediately saw the papers spread across the table. Her reaction told me everything I needed to know. Instead of confusion or surprise, her face showed pure panic. She knew exactly what those documents contained. "Mom, Audrey, please do not break up our family," Emma said, tears already starting to form in her eyes. "I was just trying to protect Dad. He has been so lonely since Mom died, and I thought maybe if he could be happy again, we could all be happier." I looked at this 17-year-old girl who had called me Mom for 3 years, who I had treated like my own daughter, and felt nothing but cold disappointment. "You protected him from your family, not for your family, Emma. There is a difference." Mark tried a different approach, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "Even if there was something between Jessica and me, it does not have to destroy what we have built here. Emma needs stability. She needs you in her life." I pulled my hand away and opened the evidence folder. "Emma needs to learn that actions have consequences, and you both need to understand that I will not be taken advantage of anymore." As I explained the contents of the divorce filing, the reality of their situation became clear. The house would have to be sold with me receiving my proportional share of the equity plus additional compensation for the improvements I had funded. Mark's income alone could not support the mortgage payments, and without my financial contribution, they would be forced to find a much smaller and less expensive place to live. Emma's face crumpled when I explained that her college fund was gone and that I would no longer be paying her private school tuition for the remainder of the academic year. "But I already applied to colleges," she whispered. "I got into some really good schools." And now you will need to find a way to pay for them without my help, I replied. Just like you will need to find a way to pay for your car insurance, your phone bill, and all the other expenses I have been covering. The next few hours were filled with tears, accusations, and desperate attempts at negotiation. Emma tried every emotional manipulation technique she had learned over the years, bringing up her deceased mother and our shared memories. Mark offered to end the affair immediately and attend marriage counseling, promising to do whatever it would take to save our marriage. But I had already made my decision. The trust that had been the foundation of our relationship was gone, destroyed not just by Mark's betrayal, but by Emma's willing participation in deceiving me. The aftermath of that confrontation unfolded exactly as I had planned, though watching it happen still gave me a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Within 6 weeks, our house was sold to a young family who appreciated the improvements I had made over the years. The real estate market was strong, and I received my full 60% share, plus additional compensation for the custom kitchen and updated bathrooms that I had personally funded. Mark and Emma were forced to move into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town, a significant downgrade from the spacious 4-bedroom house they had been accustomed to. The financial strain was immediate and severe. Without my income supporting the household, Mark struggled to maintain their previous standard of living while also paying substantial legal fees and the court-ordered spousal support. Emma's senior year of high school became a harsh lesson in financial reality. The private school required immediate payment of outstanding tuition, which Mark could not afford on his salary alone. Emma had to transfer to the local public school for her final semester, leaving behind the friends and teachers who had known her for years. Her college acceptance letters, which had once filled her with excitement, became sources of anxiety as she realized that most of the schools were financially out of reach. The stress of these sudden changes took a toll on Mark's relationship with Jessica as well. Her pregnancy had been complicated from the beginning, requiring expensive medical care and frequent doctor visits. The financial pressure of supporting a pregnant girlfriend while paying divorce settlements and trying to maintain a household proved overwhelming for Mark's accountant salary. 6 months into the pregnancy, Jessica suffered a miscarriage. While I felt genuine sympathy for their loss, I could not ignore the irony that the pregnancy that had motivated Mark to betray our marriage was no longer a factor in his future. Without the baby binding them together, and with the financial stress mounting, Mark and Jessica's relationship began to deteriorate rapidly. Emma struggled to adjust to her new circumstances in ways that made me realize how much she had taken my support for granted. She had to get a part-time job at a local retail store to help with household expenses, working evenings and weekends, instead of participating in the extracurricular activities that would have helped her college applications. Her grades suffered as she tried to balance work, school, and the emotional turmoil of her dramatically changed family situation. The social consequences were perhaps the most difficult for Emma to handle. Word of the affair and her involvement in covering it up spread through our small community, partly because Mark's colleagues at the accounting firm learned about the divorce, and partly because the private school administration had questions about the sudden tuition problems. Emma found herself isolated from many of her former friends, whose parents no longer trusted her character. 8 months after our divorce was finalized, Emma called me for the first time since that confrontational evening in our kitchen. Her voice was small and uncertain, nothing like the confident teenager who had once called me Mom Audrey. "I graduated last week," she said. "I know you probably do not care, but I wanted you to know. I got into state university with partial scholarship money, but I will have to take out loans for the rest." I felt a pang of sadness for the girl I had once loved like a daughter, but I also felt proud of her for finding a way to move forward despite the consequences of her choices. "Congratulations on your graduation, Emma. I hope college goes well for you." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I made a mistake, you know. You were a good mom to me, better than I deserved. I thought Jessica would be cooler, more fun, someone who would understand me better because she was younger. but she never cared about me the way you did. She was just using me to get closer to Dad." This admission confirmed something I had suspected. Emma had not just been helping Mark hide his affair out of loyalty to her father. She had been actively hoping that Jessica would replace me as her stepmother, believing that a younger woman would be more permissive and generous than I had been. "I remember teaching you to drive in our driveway," I said quietly. "I remember helping you pick out your homecoming dress and staying up all night with you when you had the flu. I remember all of it, Emma. But I also remember that you chose to throw all of that away for someone who was using you." "I know," she whispered. "I know, and I am sorry. Is there any way we could try again? I learned my lesson. I really did." I took a deep breath before answering. "Emma, some lessons cost more than others. The lesson about loyalty and trust in family has cost you my presence in your life. That is not something I can undo, even if I wanted to." 2 years later, I had built a completely new life that was fuller and more authentic than the one I had lost. I used my settlement money to buy a beautiful condominium downtown, closer to my office and the cultural activities I enjoyed. My career flourished with the renewed energy and focus that came from not having to manage constant family drama and financial responsibilities for ungrateful people. I eventually started dating again, meeting someone through mutual friends who appreciated my independence and strength rather than seeing them as threats. When I told him the story of my divorce, his response was immediate support for the choices I had made. "You taught them both valuable lessons about consequences," he said, "even if they never thank you for it." I also began volunteering with a support group for divorced women, sharing my experience with others who had been betrayed by spouses and stepchildren. Many of them struggled with guilt about setting boundaries with family members, and I was able to help them understand that self-respect and self-protection are not selfish acts. Emma made a few more attempts to reconnect over the years, usually coinciding with times when she was facing financial difficulties or relationship problems. Each time her messages followed the same pattern: acknowledgement of her mistakes, expressions of regret and requests for forgiveness that really amounted to requests for renewed financial support. 3 years after our divorce, I ran into Mark at a coffee shop near his office. He looked older and more tired than I remembered, and he seemed genuinely surprised to see me looking healthy and happy. We had a brief, polite conversation during which he admitted that losing our marriage had been the biggest mistake of his life. "Emma talks about you sometimes," he said awkwardly. "She is doing okay in college, working hard, but I think she misses having you in her life." "I miss the girl I thought she was," I replied honestly. "But I do not miss being lied to and taken advantage of by people who were supposed to love me." Mark nodded, understanding that there would be no reconciliation. "I want you to know that I understand why you did what you did. We deserved the consequences." That conversation gave me a sense of closure that I had not realized I was still seeking. Mark's acknowledgement of their responsibility validated my decision to protect myself rather than enable their continued betrayal. Looking back now, I realize that the most important lesson I learned was about the difference between loving someone and allowing them to use you. For years, I had confused being generous and supportive with being a good stepmother and wife. I had believed that my worth in our family was measured by how much I could give and how many problems I could solve for other people. The truth was that real love requires mutual respect, honesty, and consideration for each other's feelings and well-being. Emma and Mark had never truly respected me. They had simply appreciated my usefulness to them. When Jessica appeared as a potentially more useful replacement, they had no hesitation about discarding me. I learned that being a mother figure means teaching right from wrong, even when the lesson costs them everything they thought they wanted. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the natural consequences of their choices, because that is the only way they will truly learn. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you treated like family, only to discover they never truly valued your relationship? What would you have done if you discovered that your stepchild was actively helping your spouse cheat? Share your thoughts in the comments below, And do not forget to hit that like button if this story resonated with your own experiences with family betrayal. Subscribe for more stories about finding the courage to protect yourself when the people closest to you prove they cannot be trusted. Please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that their worth is not determined by how much they sacrifice for ungrateful people. Remember, loyalty should always be mutual, and respect is not optional in healthy relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive behavior, even when it comes from people you care about deeply.